Hello. Hello, everybody. We're going to give it one more minute for people to come in, and then we're going to start. Okay, I think we're ready. So welcome everybody to our Wanderlust Wednesday from Adventure Tripper. Today we're going to be covering Antarctica for all of us who have dreamt of going there and doing this once in a lifetime trip. So just before we start, a few logistical comments. We are trying YouTube for the first time as our new platform from webinars. In order to interact with us, you need to log into your Google account and then use the chat on your right, okay? For those of you that are not able to log in or for some reason the chat doesn't work for you, you can send us your questions to our email. I will be checking them and then I will be saving the questions. So our email is team@adventuretripper.com. So you can actually see it written under my name. That's not my name. My name is Michelle. But I thought I'd put my email in case you guys cannot use the chat and want to use our email. I see that the chat works from some, so that's good to hear. Okay, so now what's important is to introduce our super guest. She is an expert on all things Antarctica. Laura, she comes with an extensive background on polar expedition. She's one of the few people in the planet that has had the pleasure to call McMurdo Station home. She started her life there washing pots, and then she worked her way out of the kitchen into logistics and taking care of visitors. So with over 2 years spent living in Antarctica, Laura has a suitcase full of stories to share about wildlife, history, science, exploration, and the magic of a place that she called home. She is now also an expert in bringing visitors to come to Antarctica and make the most out of their trip. So she will tell us all about it. And remember, post all your questions on the chat. Welcome, Lara. I'll let you continue introducing yourself and go ahead.
Hi, Michelle. Thanks for that. And hi, everybody here. Thanks for joining us tonight. And I just want to talk with you about everything Antarctica. Share a little with you about my life living in Antarctica. Talk a bit about why Antarctica. Why do people want to travel to this destination? And then discuss the fly cruise, the itinerary that we think is one of the best ways to travel to Antarctica. And then talk a little bit about a day in the life on expedition, and then how we prepare you for your major adventure. So like Michelle said, I lived in Antarctica. I worked as part of the United States Antarctic program and lived there seasonally for about 6 months on, 6 months off the ice between the months of October through March. I lived at McMurdo Station, which is the largest science station on the continent of Antarctica. In the summer season, we can actually get up to about 1,000 people operating 24/7. So it's a really busy place. Most science stations are much smaller, typically under 100 people, and sometimes down into the teens. So McMurdo is different in that in size. And it's, where is McMurdo? Where is Antarctica? So with this map, you have the bird's eye view looking down at the bottom of the world. And where I was over at McMurdo Station was on the southern side on the Ross Ice Shelf. We were actually a little island there. And we transported to McMurdo from New Zealand, which, as you can see, right around from the end of the globe on the south side. Now, the folks that go to Antarctica as tourists would go in from the other side. Almost all go in from South America, either from Punta Arenas or Ushuaia, Chile or Argentina. And then later we'll talk about King George Island, where the fly cruise takes you to. So I just wanted you to have an idea of the mass of the continent and the different sides and where science is versus where kind of the playground in the peninsula is. So to get to McMurdo Station, Antarctica, we would load in the belly of a C-17 military aircraft leaving from New Zealand and fly about 5 hours or so down to Antarctica, where we would land on runway's maze of ice. This is a larger aircraft, so it has wheels, as you can see, but many of the aircrafts that fly there, the Hercules 130, actually lands on skis at a different airfield, but it's all done on ice. Once we land, you step off the plane and the awe of Antarctica. There's no buildings or structures or airports, right? And you're just suddenly in Antarctica, where you board a large passenger transport and you go to McMurdo Station. So in Antarctica, everybody has jobs that's there. You're working in support of science, and my job was to drive this monster bus, Ivan the Terror Bus. So I would be able to see people when they first got off the plane and saw Antarctica for the first time, and then transport them into town in this giant beast of a bus. In the shuttles department, we would take people from the island out into the different science stations and to the airfields at the various shuttle stops around. And we would manage passenger logistics and send folks off to the South Pole or various field camps around the continent. I'm heading out for science. We drove on roads compacted of ice and snow. So as the temperatures would warm up for the summer, the roads would melt. So it was always an adventure. I would spend some time 12 hours a day driving on this road. But from the weather and the different road conditions, it looked different every time all through the year. And in the summer season, it's 24 hours of daylight. So this picture could have easily been taken at 2 in the morning versus 2 in the afternoon. You can't tell a difference in the summer months, right in the heart of it. This is just another shot of some of the monster vehicles that people would load in to get transported around the continent for trips to the airfield or trips to the volcano for fun, you know. This is McMurdo Station itself. It looks a bit like a construction zone meets a mining town, and it feels like that with constant beeping and movement. But this is the heart of it right here. It's not too large, and it's left over from the 1950s, so it's all mismatched and put together from there. Everybody down there lives in these dorms, so it's a bit like a college like atmosphere, housed in the same place. You eat in the galley, you have meals together. The galley's full of laughter and fun. This is a place where cell phones don't work, right? You actually have to talk to the people that you're with and have real human connection. You might as well leave your cell phone in airplane mode the whole time. And as you can see, it just looks like a big construction zone of working equipment, moving science around, moving supplies around. And this is actually science. This is a payload that was loaded into a hot air balloon and sent into orbit by NASA. And it was gathering data whenever they designed this payload to gather. This here is a remote science station out on the field camp. And this actually, inside here, they were working with the Artemis robot that's now up in space orbiting oceans and the moon. So McMurdo, if you aren't down there doing science and working in support of science, you're out having fun, right? We have dodgeball tournaments and yoga classes and science lectures and live music and exploration through ice fields and wildlife and all these incredible adventures mixed into world and life. And it's an interesting life living at the bottom of the world. But, you know, whether you're living there, right, and wash dishes in the dish room, or you travel there as a tourist and are able to experience this magical place, I think there's clear connections between this. Why Antarctica? You know, sometimes when you say to people Antarctica, they're like, what, why, where? So, you know, I wanted to go through a couple of those things that makes this place unlike anywhere else on the planet. One, it's the wildlife. You have these incredible populations of seabirds and penguin colonies and seals and whales, and we are in their land and their environment, and they are everywhere. And the penguins are the most curious little critters. They have no fear. They've never needed to fear humans down there. So there's this great interaction between you and the wildlife, and you're just in their world and experiencing it and seeing it. The landscapes are incredible. I think that's the number one to me that makes Antarctica different than any other place on the planet. It's the ice. You can't find a landscape made of ice anywhere else, not in the Arctic, not out in South Georgia. In the Antarctic, it's ice, and it's mesmerizing, the colors of blues and the hues you'll see there. The history is incredible, and really in the history of the world, it's pretty recent. The stories of heroic explorations that come out of the South Pole and out of Antarctica in general. So that's incredible to be a part of. The science is some of the best in the world, right? And they're looking at everything from how seals navigate underwater to what happened the moment after the Big Bang. So the science is massive and fascinating. And on board, you're able to take part in citizen science experiments, right? If you're drilling into the ice to give it a year, or if you're tagging whales via photographs for different science teams, there's opportunities on board the ships to be able to take part in science and really learn about it. Another great thing about Antarctica is it's a complete digital detox. There is Wi-Fi available, but it's really scattered. You know, you're in a really remote place on the planet. So I think it's great to set expectations that you're going to digitally detox and just listen to the sound of the silence, because that's really what the Antarctic offers. You can have authentic connection with your family, your friends, the folks you're traveling with. The expedition team is incredible. And this is also a fantastic trip to go as a solo traveler. This is a small expedition vessel, less than 100 passengers. So friends are abound, right? It's an intimate experience where everybody's talking and communicating and enjoying together from a global community. There's typically 12 to 18 different nations that are represented on board any given trip. There's an incredible education and experience that goes into these adventures. Again, the expedition team on the ships are incredible and share this wide array of knowledge with you, so you can really dig deep into this experience. And of course, it's on so many bucket lists because it is the seventh continent. So there's always that for this ultimate destination that is Antarctica. So, you know, there's there's two main ways that folks travel to Antarctica to experience it as a tourist. One, they sail across the Drake Passage from Ushuaia, or two, we fly you there from Punta Arenas, Chile. So the benefits are the fly cruise is number one, the speed. It takes 2 hours for us to fly you from Punta Arenas, Chile to King George Island, Antarctica. We fly you across the Drake Passage. If you sail across the Drake Passage, it takes a minimum of 2 days each way. So that's 4 days of your trip spit out to sea in what is known as the wildest waterways in the world. See this ship here? I have been on this ship where the waves are going all the way over the bow across the Drake. It's a wild ride. And there's not much out there except for a couple seabirds and maybe an iceberg or two. So unless you want that historic rite of passage to kind of travel in Shackleton's footsteps, flying is really the way to get to Antarctica. So the speed is big. Number two, it maximizes your time for adventure, right? Instead of spending those 4 days out to sea, you're spending 5 days immersed in the Antarctic. And we minimize your time at sea again because you board your vessel in these inner calm waterways and passageways. So once you board the ship in Antarctica, it's very hard. There's seasickness. If people get seasick, you get seasick anywhere, but you're in very mild waters, almost no waves. But I put that caveat there because I can get seasick in the harbor, right? So I have compassion for those folks that are like, ooh. So it happens. But here's a bit of an image here, just to give you the visual of for the fly cruise, how you meet in Punta Arenas, Chile. You fly across the Drake Passage, board your boat here in the Antarctic, and sail happily away along the Antarctic Peninsula, and then return and fly on back to Chile. You know, kind of the main the main itinerary, that's our classic Antarctic itinerary here on the Fly Cruise. It's 8 days, 7 nights. So day 1, we actually meet you in Punta Arenas before 2 p.m. That's really important because that starts your weather window. We give you your boots. We have a welcome dinner. You meet your fellow travelers. You have a good night's sleep. And on the morning of day 2, we fly you over to Antarctica, where you spend the next 5 days on board. Day 7, you fly back to Punta Arenas from King George Island, spend that night again at the hotel in Punta Arenas. Again, that gives us some weather window. Sometimes you might fly back the morning of day 8. So we put a little time in there just in case. Mother Nature governs all in Antarctica, and weather definitely happens. And then on day 8, you're free to plan onward journeys. After you pick your Antarctic itinerary, and we do have a few others that Michelle can get into the details of. We have an express cruise. We have a Polar Circle cruise where you can go longer. You can go out to South Georgia and see the king penguins. But we just wanted to get to the bullet points of it with you tonight. But we have 2 ships here. One is the Ocean Nova. It's a mighty expedition vessel. It's for those that want the pure thrill of the Antarctic and don't really need all of the frills, right? You just want Antarctica. It's a 68-passenger expedition vessel, which is awesome that it's such a small number in size. And it's also really important. The Antarctic Treaty doesn't allow more than 100 passengers off the ship and to onshore at one time. So a lot of those bigger ships down there, they're having to play a merry-go-round game with their guests, getting folks on and off the ship. But we don't have to do that. We have everybody to shore at the same time, which means, again, we're maximizing your time in Antarctica, often with about 8 hours of time ashore a day. And we'll get into that a bit more in a bit. So in addition to the Ocean Nova, we have the Magellan Explorer. The Magellan Explorer is a stunning new modern expedition vessel. We just built it 3 years ago. It just launched in 2019. And this ship has 76 passengers. So it's still a really small, intimate experience. The great thing about both ships is they have the same experience. The same great staff and team are on board both ships. So the experience is the same. It's the ship that's a bit different. And I always like to show a little picture of the aircraft because people wonder what the aircraft looks like. It's, your typical everyday jet that's doing domestic flights around America. It's not prop planes, but your everyday flight that takes those 2 hours across the Drake Passage. So I've talked about them a bit, but our expedition team is world class on these trips. These guys come back year after year because they don't like to sell the Drake any more than anybody else does. So we have a very seasoned crew that's on our expedition team. Often on board amongst the team, they'll have at least 100 years of experience per expedition team on board. These are folks of people that are oceanographers, naturalists, climate photographers, mountaineers, marine biologists, historians, the list goes on and on. They are incredible and they love to share their knowledge and their love of the Antarctic with you. And they really just make this experience come to life. Again, another reason why we love this Fly Cruise trip is the guest to guide ratio is the most of any you'll find in the industry. So there's at least one guide to every 12 guests. The great thing about that is it keeps it super flexible on shore. For those folks that just want to hang out on the beach and listen to the naturalists talk about the penguins, they can do that. The folks that want to go climb the mountain with the mountaineers, they can do that. So there's something for everybody, which is fantastic with these folks. And then I want to talk to you about what do you do when you're down there? What is a day on expedition like? So your typical day, your expedition leader will come on board and greet you the day and invite you to your morning breakfast buffet. After you go and enjoy the full spread of breakfast buffet, you'll typically get off the ship by 9 a.m. or so for your morning excursion. You'll be off the ship for 3 to 4 hours based on the landing site, the weather, and whatnot. And then you'll be invited back on board for lunch, and the ship will take off and navigate to another landing site for the afternoon. So then in the afternoon, you'll be off the ship again for another 3 to 4 hours, and then back on board for a festive time in the lounge with snacks and drinks. The crew will give a presentation, typically a recap of the day, what to look forward to the next day, and something on science or wildlife, or something that's pertinent to what's happening in the Antarctica right then. If you saw a huge pot of whales that day, they'll speak more about those whales. So they tie the knowledge in with what's happening on your journey. And then they invite you for a delicious served dinner, to enjoy the night with your fellow travelers and get ready for the next day in the Antarctic. Another thing about is the excursions, right? Now you know how you spend your day, but what do you actually do there? A lot of times people just sit mesmerized at the scenery, but there's actually a lot you can really do based on the landing site. There's wildlife watching, there's zodiac cruising, there's hiking, historic huts, science stations, citizen science opportunities, photography opportunities, and just the opportunity to enjoy this incredible place that you're in, because really just being in the Antarctic is activity enough, which I know is hard to understand, but once you're there, you'll realize that you don't need to do anything more than to just be there and be in this place. On this trip, we do have a couple extra options. There's sea kayaking opportunities, but it's important to know that there's tons of time on the water zodiac riding. So if you can't get a spot kayaking because it's hard to get the spots, then there's plenty of time to enjoy kayaking. And I also like to talk about our extra hiking and snowshoeing opportunities to make sure it's defined, because every excursion is going to have a hiking opportunity, again, based on that landing site. But some landing sites will give you the opportunity to go farther, get in more miles, climb a peak, really get out there. And that's what these additional hiking and snowshoeing opportunities are for those people that really want to climb in and go as far as they can go. Every trip tries to do a polar plunge. It's a big thing on folks' bucket list, and it's quite festive, right? The whole ship watches as people take their turns doing their polar plunge and enjoying their vodka afterwards, and it's really a fun and festive experience. I always like to mention that on this trip we are carbon neutral. We're leading the way in sustainability in Antarctica and really doing everything we can to have a positive impact on the environment, which is fantastic. Our ships really run almost like a science station, where they're able to recycle nearly everything and just do everything that they can to protect this environment that we love. And we help you get ready for your adventure. We know that this is a big departure for people, and that it's the unknown, right? So we're there to help you prepare for every step of the way. We have an expedition portal that lets you see videos about how to board zodiacs and reading lists, and just to get more into your trip and get excited about it. And we help you know how to gear up. Here we provide the waterproof boots that are needed for your journey, and they're fantastic. We don't provide a parka, and that's really because we believe that's an individual choice. Some people already have those gears, right? I usually live in my puffy vest down there. It's not actually as cold as people think. The Antarctic Peninsula in the summer can be warmer than a rainy day in Seattle, right? It's just not as cold. Now, if you're in the South Pole in the middle of winter, it's quite cold. That's a different conversation. But where you're going, you basically need to wear ski clothes, and layers are really important, because what is relentless in the Antarctic is the wind, and it's cold because it's coming off the polar waters and the ice. So you really want to be protected from the wind in the Antarctic. And that's really kind of it in a nutshell, and I just want to thank everybody for their time and for their interest in Antarctica. And I'm here with Michelle to help answer all of your questions and just get you ready for this awesome journey.
Thanks a lot, Laura. That was like super interesting. I so want to go. It really looks fantastic. Huh? So I've been putting together here the questions, some of them who I have, some of them that have been sent, but everybody feel free to write more questions. So I guess, I mean, your presentation was very complete, but I still have a question. So when is the time of the year that that is good to go to Antarctica? When do you recommend is the best time?
Sure. I don't recommend it. I don't like to say that there's a best time down there because really what's different down there is the wildlife per season. So you can travel down there from really the end of November until the end of March. And in that, if you go in November, you're going to see all the ice and you're going to see penguins sitting on the eggs, right? And the chicks that haven't hatched in the eggs yet. And as it grows farther into January, you're going to see those chicks hatching and the ice starting to melt. February, you're going to see chicks everywhere and whales jumping out of the water everywhere because the ice is melted. And March, you'll see everything starting to freeze back up again. So it's really an interesting cycle, but I don't think that there's a bad time to go to the Antarctic.
Okay,
But
so
you
from
can
November
only
to
go
March.
November to March. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Another question from our audience. Are kids allowed on this? What is the age group? I guess how young can they go?
8. The minimum age is 8.
Okay, so families and with kids above 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the fitness level needed for this adventure?
It can really be quite flexible. The ships do have stairs. So you'll need to be able to go up, 2 to 3 flights of stairs based on your floor on the ship. But as far as being on shore, it's varied. On the last trip I was on, there was this lady that was in her 80s, and I watched the expedition crew lift her in and out of the Zodiacs and walk with her arm in arm on the shore. So and like I said, you can hike the mountains. So it's really open to all fitness levels as long as you have some mobility to go up and down those stairs, step in and out of a Zodiac with help. But you don't have to feel like you can climb a mountain. You don't need to.
Yeah, so you can do calmer activities and then you can join the more hardcore activities.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. And for those, I mean, I don't even know, like, what is the visa situation? Like, do you have to apply for a visa or can anybody go?
Anybody can go. The Antarctic is open to all. The Antarctic, you can't just go, right? You can't decide that you're going to plan your own trip to the Antarctic. You have to go through an authorized operator in the Antarctic. And then that person has all the permits and paperwork. But yeah, as a traveler, sometimes you might need a visa to travel through Chile or Argentina, depending on where you're coming from. But to travel to Antarctica, you don't need anything. But you will need to go through one of those ports. So for Chile or Argentina, what's ever
Okay, so then
there.
you just need to worry about visas for Chile or Argentina.
Right.
Once in Antarctica, everything is taken care of.
That's it. If you're a traveler with a United States passport, you just book your ticket and go. Nothing required at all.
Okay. Yeah, we have some audience internationally, so it's good to know.
Yeah, it varies a bit.
Okay. Now we have a question regarding pricing. So I think that's a good moment now to compare the trips. So you guys offer the express air cruise and the classic air cruise that you just talked about. Can you just tell us what is the difference with the express air cruise?
Sure. The big difference with the express cruise is it sails across the Drake Passage one way and then it flies back the other way, which is cool because then you can be part of both of those adventures. But it is important to notice that trip does not spend as much time in Antarctica. It does try to go through Cape Horn and some other places you leave South America, which is quite unique. But your time in Antarctica varies by the weather, and typically you get somewhere between 1 to 3 landings on the continent. So that's going to be anywhere from 3 to 12 hours, kind of depending on how the sailing across the passage goes. So you get to see it. If you're a bucket lister and that's all you want, well, you can check it. You've been there. But you don't really get to immerse
With
in
the other
full
guy, you
Antarctic.
get 5 days, so it's way more.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Once, independently from the trip price, how much extra cash do you need down there to spend?
Sure, good question. Really not much. As far as the trip goes, once you meet us in Punta Arenas, it's all inclusive. The only thing that's not included would be if you want to buy Wi-Fi, which is about $50 a gig. Tipping the expedition and hospitality crew, which I think is suggested at about $30 to $50 a day. But again, that's a gratuity suggestion. It's not a requirement. Beer and wine are included and served at lunch and dinner, with no limit. So you can have a full glass when you leave lunch and dinner. But the bar is an additional cost. At night, cocktails are cheap. They're about $4 each. It's really but so that, and laundry if you want to do laundry. But
Okay.
there's not any daily costs that are required.
Okay. And we have a question about the food. So I think I remember looking from at your trips that the food is quite delicious. But tell us a little bit more. What are the options?
Yeah, the food is quite delicious and really varied. It's pretty impressive. They can take care of most they can take care of a lot of dietary needs. They can definitely mind any allergies, right? And if there's folks on board that are nuts, they'll have labels. They can certainly do gluten free, vegetarian, pescatarian. They don't promise vegan, but I have had many vegans on board, and they're quite happy with what is available. Kosher is tricky. They're not able to promise kosher. That's the one thing that can't be offered, but most dietary needs are met. And really, it's usually, it's a spread, and it has a lot of variety. It's really top notch as far as the food is concerned.
Okay. The question is food included in the cost? And that the answer is yes. So everything is included. Once you arrive to Punta Arenas, you will be picked up to be taken to the airport, right?
Right.
And then from that point on, everything is included. Well, except what Laura mentioned about extra drinks and tips. Everything is going to be included: the expeditions, the accommodation in the boat, and the food.
Yep,
So
all of it.
it's all
Breakfast and
inclusive.
lunch are buffets, and dinner is, I used to say it's a 3-course served meal, but the last time I was on board, I realized I could order as many courses as I wanted. So so now I know that is unlimited. But yeah, lunch and breakfast are buffets, but huge spreads. Sometimes there'll be a full buffet area, full salad bar area, and like a pop-up noodle bar or something. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of variety going on.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I wanted to then finish this with the price, because we still have that question to answer. So the price varies, of course, in which type of cruise and which type of cabin you choose. We actually have a special deal. Laura just gave us a special deal for our customers of $2,000 off. And this $2,000 off can start at the lowest price of $11,500. So if you take $2,000 off, it's $9,500. That would be the lowest price for this season for the classic tour. So the full 8 days. We do have a cheaper cruise that is the 6th day that she mentioned. That one, I think the cheapest, it starts at 6,000, right, Laura? I think about
right about there. Yeah.
So tomorrow we'll send an email with more details for everybody who attended the webinar, and we will give links to our website where you can see the prices. Like I said, that's how it starts. But if you want to upgrade your cabin or different ships, then the price can change. But that's the starting price for the trip. I think we don't have any more questions. So I want to thank you so much, Laura, for giving this super exciting introduction to Antarctica. I am completely sold. I think everybody was really happy to hear about your adventures. And yeah, we can't wait to go. I do have to say that spots sell out quickly. We learned that last year. So that's why we're doing the webinar now, because now is the time to book for end of 2023, 2024. So yeah, we're looking forward to hearing from you. Email us for any other questions, more details on the trips, but we will send all the information tomorrow. Sorry, and then I think there was a question about the flying costs. The flying costs, we cannot say because we don't know where you're coming from, but do you know, Laura, more or less from the US,
Yeah, from the US, it's usually, on the low end 900, depending on what you can get. But then I would say top end again for economy 1500. 1200 floating, depending on anywhere in the states, is
Yeah.
pretty average. But I've seen some nonstops out of LA for as low as 900 sometimes. So
Punta Arenas, Chile, right?
well, Santiago to Santiago,
Santiago
and
and
then it
then Punta
connect.
Arenas. Yeah.
All the flights will go through Santiago, all
Yeah.
of them. No matter where you're coming from in the world, you will go through Santiago
Yeah.
before moving
Okay.
on to Punta Arenas.
Okay. Okay. Well, thanks a lot, Laura. And for everybody, have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.